What happens when one of the most respected actresses in Hollywood sits across from one of the most controversial figures of modern royalty? The result was one of the most unforgettable daytime TV moments ever. Today, we're going to break down exactly what happened when Angelina Jolie and Meghan Markle appeared together live on television, and why this clash has left millions talking. The studio was buzzing even before the cameras rolled. Everyone in the audience knew something big was about to happen. The energy was different, electric, charged, as though people could sense that this wasn't going to be an ordinary celebrity interview. Whoopi Goldberg, seated at the center of the panel, welcomed viewers with her trademark authority. "Today," she began, "we have two very special guests." The audience erupted into cheers as she introduced the first. "Please welcome actress, director, and humanitarian, Angelina Jolie." Angelina walked onto the stage gracefully, her calm presence commanding instant respect. She smiled warmly at the crowd, waved, and took her seat. There was an ease about her, the kind that comes from years of global humanitarian work and decades of experience in the spotlight. Then came the second introduction. "And please welcome Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex." Meghan stepped onto the stage with a dazzling smile. Her outfit was carefully chosen, her hair styled perfectly, and every detail seemed calculated. She looked confident, but there was also something in her expression, an intensity, a hunger, as if she had come with more than just promotional talking points. The contrast between the two women was impossible to ignore. Angelina appeared natural, calm, and genuinely present. Meghan, on the other hand, seemed almost to be performing, her posture straight, her hands placed deliberately, as though every movement had been rehearsed. The conversation began pleasantly enough. Joy Behar opened with enthusiasm. "Angelina, you're here to talk about your new film highlighting refugee stories. Meghan, you'll be discussing your upcoming Netflix documentary. Two very different projects, but both with an important social message." Angelina responded first. Her tone was thoughtful and sincere. She spoke about her years working with refugees, about witnessing families who had lost everything but still carried immense strength and resilience. "I wanted to create a film that amplifies their voices," she explained. "It's about honoring their courage and showing the world the humanity behind the headlines." The audience applauded, clearly moved. Sarah Haynes added, "Your work with the United Nations has been incredible. You've inspired so many people." Angelina smiled humbly. "It's the refugees themselves who inspire me. They've taught me more about strength than any role I've ever played." Then Meghan leaned forward, eager to join in. "I completely understand that passion," she said. "My own journey has shown me the importance of standing up for issues like mental health and women's empowerment. What people don't realize is how isolating it can be when you're trying to use your platform for good, but facing constant criticism." The air in the room shifted. Even though the conversation was supposed to be about Angelina's film, Meghan had redirected it toward her own struggles. The panel exchanged subtle glances. Viewers at home could feel it too. The tension was building. Sunny Hostin tried to keep the tone balanced. "Both of you have brought global attention to causes that matter. Meghan, can you tell us about your new series?" Meghan smiled, clearly pleased to have the spotlight. "It's about authenticity," she explained. "It's about breaking free from systems that silence women. I think a lot of people, especially women of color, know what it feels like to be trapped by institutions that smile at you publicly but tear you down privately." The implication was clear. Meghan was referencing her experiences with the royal family, without naming them directly. Alyssa Farah Griffin then turned the question back to Angelina. "Angelina, in your work, have you faced similar challenges with institutions?" Angelina paused thoughtfully before answering. "I've learned that real progress doesn't come from focusing on obstacles. It comes from staying committed to the work itself. Refugees I've met don't have institutional support. They've lost their homes, their countries. But they create resilience in their communities, even with nothing." It was a powerful, grounded response. Angelina hadn't attacked Meghan directly, but she had drawn a clear distinction. True service means centering others, not yourself. Meghan's smile faltered for a moment. She quickly replied, "Of course, but I think it's also important to acknowledge the personal battles we fight. When your character is constantly under attack in the press while you're trying to do good work, it takes a toll." By this point, the tension was undeniable. One woman spoke about the struggles of people fleeing war zones, the other about her personal pain at being criticized by the media. The audience shifted in their seats, sensing the clash of perspectives. As the discussion continued, it became increasingly clear who was connecting with the audience. Angelina's calm wisdom drew admiration and applause, while Meghan's defensiveness left many uncomfortable. When the segment ended, Angelina received a standing ovation. Meghan, however, sat quietly, her carefully practiced smile barely hiding her frustration. It was more than just a TV interview. It was a moment that exposed two very different approaches to fame, advocacy, and authenticity. One built on humility and service. The other rooted in image and narrative control. By the time the cameras cut, one thing was certain: audiences had witnessed a clash that would be replayed and debated for years to come. The tension inside the studio was building with every passing moment. What had started as a friendly discussion about projects and humanitarian work was now sliding into much deeper, sharper territory. Joy Behar, her journalist instincts kicking in, leaned forward. "Character assassination is a strong term, Meghan. Are you talking about specific incidents?" Meghan didn't hesitate. She spoke with the same careful tone she often used in her serious interviews. "I'm talking about a pattern," she said. "A pattern of being systematically undermined, one that goes far beyond normal media criticism. When you try to modernize ancient institutions while also facing racial bias, the pushback can be overwhelming." The audience was dead silent. Everyone could feel the weight of her words. Even the panel seemed unusually still, as though they knew this was moving toward something bigger. Whoopi Goldberg, always skilled at controlling tense conversations, tried to ease the tension. "Let's bring this back for a moment," she said. "Angelina, your film is premiering next month, right?" Angelina nodded, her voice steady. "Yes. And my hope is that it will encourage people everywhere to support refugee resettlement programs in their own communities. Real change always starts at the grassroots level, when ordinary people make the decision to get involved." Her words carried a quiet authority. And again, the difference in tone was noticeable. Angelina emphasized action and service over complaint and self-focus. The contrast was subtle but powerful. Meghan shifted in her seat. For the first time, she looked unsettled. She had tried to center the conversation on her personal struggles, but the audience wasn't responding with the sympathy she expected. The panelists, seasoned professionals, could also see the pattern. They recognized when a guest was pushing an agenda. And Angelina's calm presence seemed to shine an uncomfortable light on Meghan's approach. Finally, Meghan spoke with a sharper tone. "You know what?" she said, her voice tightening. "It's easy for some people to talk about grassroots change when they haven't had to deal with the kind of institutional racism and silencing that I faced. Not everyone has had the privilege of being universally beloved by the media." The air in the studio shifted immediately. The remark was pointed. Though she hadn't named her directly, it was clearly aimed at Angelina. For the first time all morning, the studio was silent not out of respect but out of shock. This was new ground for daytime television, a direct confrontation between two powerful women, live on camera. Angelina didn't flinch. Her face remained calm, but her eyes carried a quiet strength. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "Are you suggesting that my humanitarian work has been easy because of how the media treats me?" Meghan doubled down. "I'm suggesting that some of us have had to fight harder to have our voices heard. When you're dealing with palace insiders leaking stories, tabloids twisting your every word, and family members refusing to protect you, that's a different kind of struggle." Sarah Haynes shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "Meghan, those are serious claims about your time in the royal family," she said carefully. "They're not claims," Meghan snapped. "They're facts. And it's important for people to understand the difference between someone who gets to choose their humanitarian projects and someone who is silenced when trying to talk about mental health, racism, and basic dignity." The accusation was crystal clear. Meghan was implying that Angelina's work, no matter how global or impactful, was somehow easier or less meaningful because she hadn't faced the same personal battles. Whoopi, who had seen countless heated debates in her years as moderator, quickly tried to step in. "Ladies, maybe we can." But Angelina raised her hand gently. "It's all right, Whoopi," she said. "This is an important conversation." She turned to face Meghan directly, her tone calm but firm. "I've spent over 20 years working in refugee camps, in war zones, and in communities devastated by natural disasters. I have held dying children in my arms. I have sat with mothers who lost their families to violence. I have been threatened, criticized, and called every name in the book, from homewrecker to publicity seeker." The room was so silent you could hear a pin drop. Even the cameras seemed to draw in closer, capturing the intensity of the moment. "But," Angelina continued, her voice steady, "never once have I made my personal struggles the center of the story when discussing the suffering of others. The refugees I work with don't have Netflix deals to tell their stories. They don't have royal titles, media platforms, or talk show stages. They have nothing. Nothing but their courage and their hope that someone, somewhere, will help them rebuild their lives." The audience sat frozen. Meghan's expression changed instantly. Her confident smile faltered, her face paling slightly. This wasn't the reaction she expected. "I think you're misunderstanding me," Meghan tried to recover. "I never said your work wasn't important. I'm only saying that different people face different kinds of barriers." "Barriers?" Angelina repeated, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Do you mean barriers like being born in a war zone? Barriers like watching your home destroyed in front of you? Barriers like carrying your children across hundreds of miles on foot, with no guarantee of food or safety?" Her words cut through the air like a blade. The audience gasped softly. Joy Behar, who rarely found herself speechless, sat back, stunned. This wasn't just a disagreement. This was something far larger. This was perspective colliding with performance. Meghan's voice grew defensive. "That's not what I meant. Obviously, those situations are tragic. But I'm talking about institutional racism, about being gaslit, about isolation within powerful families." But by then, the divide was undeniable. One woman spoke of unimaginable suffering she had witnessed firsthand. The other spoke of personal wounds magnified by the press. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. The segment had turned into something unforgettable, a clash of worldviews, a collision of authenticity and narrative. And while the cameras kept rolling, everyone in the room knew they were witnessing a television moment that would be replayed and debated for years to come. The atmosphere inside the View studio was charged with energy. Everyone in the audience could sense something unusual was about to happen. The hosts sat ready at the table, and Whoopi Goldberg introduced the day's guests. "Please welcome our first guest, actress, director, and humanitarian, Angelina Jolie." The crowd cheered loudly as Angelina walked out. She smiled warmly, greeting the audience with graceful waves before sitting down. She carried herself with calm confidence, the kind that comes from years of experience both in Hollywood and on the ground in refugee camps. "And now," Whoopi continued, "please welcome the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle." Meghan appeared from backstage, smiling brightly as the audience clapped. Her outfit was elegant, her posture perfect, every detail polished. She looked ready for the spotlight. But as she walked across the stage, there was a sharp contrast between her presentation and Angelina's effortless natural presence. Joy Behar quickly jumped in. "We're so glad to have both of you here. Angelina, you're promoting your new film about refugee advocacy, and Meghan, you're discussing your Netflix series. Both are about social issues, though from very different perspectives." Angelina smiled politely. "Yes, thank you for having me. This film is close to my heart. I've spent years working with refugees, listening to their stories of survival, and I wanted to create something that amplifies their voices." The audience was drawn in by her sincerity. Sarah Haynes added, "Your work with the UN has been incredible. People often forget how long you've been in the field." Angelina nodded. "I've learned so much from people who've lost everything but still find strength to go on. They've taught me courage in ways acting never could." Meghan leaned forward, ready to add her perspective. "I understand that. My own journey has shown me injustices as well, especially in areas like mental health and women's empowerment. When you're trying to use your platform for good but constantly face criticism, it can feel isolating." The shift was noticeable. Instead of expanding on Angelina's point about refugees, Meghan turned the spotlight to herself. Some hosts exchanged subtle glances, sensing a change in tone. Sunny Hostin, skilled at handling tense moments, asked Meghan about her series. "It's about authenticity," Meghan explained. "It's about breaking free from systems that silence you. Many women, especially women of color, know what it feels like to be trapped in institutions that look supportive from the outside but are harmful behind the scenes." Everyone knew which institution she was referencing. Her words weren't just about the show, they carried sharp undertones. Alyssa Farah Griffin then redirected the conversation. "Angelina, in your humanitarian work, have you faced challenges from institutions as well?" Angelina's answer was calm and thoughtful. "Real change comes when you focus on the people you're serving, not on the barriers in your way. Refugees don't have institutional support. They build resilience from nothing, and that's where true courage lives." It was a subtle but clear contrast. Angelina was speaking about others, while Meghan kept circling back to herself. Meghan's smile tightened. "But it's important to recognize that some of us face battles on multiple fronts. When you're constantly attacked in the press, or when your own family refuses to defend you, it takes a huge toll." The studio grew silent. Meghan's words were pointed, aimed not just at institutions, but at her personal experience with the royal family. Angelina didn't flinch. She looked directly at Meghan and replied softly, "Are you suggesting that my work has been easy because of how the media treats me?" Meghan doubled down. "I'm saying not everyone has the privilege of being embraced by the public. Some of us have had to fight harder just to have our voices heard." Angelina's eyes hardened slightly, though her tone stayed even. "I've worked in war zones, held dying children, and sat with mothers who've lost everything. I've been threatened, criticized, and called opportunistic. But I've never made my personal pain the center of the story when talking about the suffering of others." The room froze. Even the camera operators seemed to lean in. Meghan tried to recover. "I never said your work wasn't important. I'm just saying some of us face additional barriers." Angelina raised an eyebrow. "Barriers like being born in a war zone? Barriers like walking miles to escape bombs with no food, no water, and carrying your children on your back? Those are barriers." The audience gasped softly. It was a brutal but undeniable comparison. Meghan's tone sharpened. "You don't understand what it's like to have an entire institution turn against you. To be silenced, to be driven to thoughts of suicide because of relentless attacks." Angelina didn't hesitate. "You're right. I don't know what that feels like. But I do know what it's like to meet mothers too weak to feed their babies. To sit with survivors of trafficking and genocide. And in those moments, I've learned that my personal pain is not the story. Theirs is." The audience was glued to every word. Alyssa leaned in, recognizing the moment. "Angelina, how do you keep going, even while facing criticism yourself?" "You remember why you started," Angelina answered simply. "You remember that privilege means using your voice for others. You center their struggles, not your own." Meghan's composure cracked. Her face flushed as she asked, "So, you think my pain doesn't matter? That speaking about racism or mental health is selfish?" Angelina shook her head gently. "No. Your story matters. But in this kind of conversation, when we're talking about humanitarian work, the focus should be on those suffering, not on how difficult it's been for you to help them. That's the difference." The words hit like a hammer. Even the seasoned hosts looked stunned. Meghan's voice trembled. "You're making it sound like I don't care about the people I'm trying to help." "Am I?" Angelina asked softly. "Because in this interview, you've spoken about your personal struggles more than a dozen times. And you've spoken about the people in your documentary, twice." Sarah quickly glanced at her notes. She gave a small nod. Angelina's observation was accurate. Meghan tried one more defense. "Context matters. People need to understand my struggles to understand my work." Angelina leaned forward slightly. "When I speak about refugees, do I spend most of the interview talking about how exhausted I was, or how the press doubted me? Or do I talk about the people who desperately need help?" The answer is obvious. The studio sat in stunned silence. Angelina had drawn a clear line between two worldviews, one rooted in service, the other in self-focus. "You don't understand the unique pressure of being in the royal family," Meghan said firmly. Angelina nodded. You're right, I don't. But I do understand the pressure of raising kids alone while working in dangerous places, of being judged for every decision, and of living under constant public scrutiny for decades. Still, I learned one thing. My struggles are not the story. The real story is the people fighting for survival. Meghan's face turned red. So, I shouldn't speak about racism or my mental health struggles? Angelina calmly replied, there's a time to share personal pain, and a time to put the spotlight on others. True advocates know the difference. She pressed Meghan with tough questions about her documentary, asking what issues it addressed and who it truly helped. Meghan struggled to answer, while Angelina stayed poised and focused. The audience applauded, not for Meghan, but for Angelina's clarity and grace. Sparkles, what do you think? Was Angelina too harsh, or exactly right? Comment below, hit like, and subscribe for more dramatic showdowns like this.